Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to another live stream. This is IPSA Kind of Magic. Frankly, it's the one place where IPSA members can get reassured they're doing the right thing for the right people at the right time. It's all about gathering information that is relevant to people. It's about refining it down and making sure it's relevant. Now, today's topic in that line is too much data, not enough clarity. And to start us off, as ever, Hamish McClay.
Good afternoon to all. Good afternoon to all. And as we get faster and faster down the route, it seems, the closer we get to Christmas, I think there's some kind of mathematical equation which I've forgotten from my youth when I was learning about mathematics. The closer you get to Christmas, it just seems the faster time goes. Not much time now for those of us who are wanting to move into our houses before Christmas. But it's almost about that particular type of topic that I actually sort of speak, or we're going to discuss this morning. We sometimes sort of forget in this world of conveyancing that we're in an isolated position, or we're just working in one particular direction. However, the speed and the pace of everything in the conveyancing world is something which isn't quite as good as desired for several reasons. And one of those is to do with communication. What we need to try and do is remember we are working with a supplier who's providing us with information or from whom we can gain information, and we need to pass information on then, and it could be for 3 or 4 different people. And we need to know what we're passing on is correct. So first of all, it does need that sort of double check. We can't just copy and paste it in. We need to take the time looking at it. And if we see any queries in that, in order to keep everything moving as swiftly as possible, we actually then check through it. Is there anything missing? And I mean, Jack is an ideal person here. I dread to think how many searches you've been through in your lifetime spent in conveyancing.
Wow. So, Jackie, it's crazy the amount of data you can dig up, but the problem is when you've got too much, you don't know where to start. I guess that's where you guys come in.
Yeah, it is. When I saw what the topic was today, I thought back to when we bought our first house in 1979 when we were young, and the information that was required then was limited, but it didn't take anywhere near as long. And as the thing is, are we now giving too much information to the conveyancer, who has to then check it, make sure that everything there is correct, it's okay, the mortgage lenders need to know that the property is okay, then he's passing it on to the purchaser, who are then going through it and possibly don't understand half the information that's there. So then they're coming back with questions. And is this what's holding up the conveyancing process? Well, the answer to that is yes. Sometimes it's not your local search, it's your enviro, your water, etc., that are throwing up information that's not needed, or is a duplicate of what we're producing. So therefore, you've got to look at the information that's in the local search. And one of the biggest things that there's too much information is the planning side, because we are supposed to reveal as far back as the land charges register goes to. Some go back to 1947. Well, we're coming up on nearly 100 years on that. We're not so far off. Some only go back to 77 when the land charges rules come in. Now, the thing is, if you're going back to 1977, which again is a long, long, long time, it's nearly going on for 50 years, there's information in there that you don't need, because what was there before is one, no longer relevant. It's gone. The building's gone. The mill that was there has been knocked down and rebuilt. The mine that was there, such as Orgreave in Rotherham, you will get the information that was to do with the mine. You don't want that. You want what's relevant to the property you're buying. And the land registry is also putting that information onto their records. And do we need it? Do we need to know that next door built an extension in 1983? No, we don't. We want to know what's happening now. We don't want to know what's happening 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So there is too much information for conveyancers to go through. There's too much information for their clients to look at, and this is holding up the process. So therefore, do we need to look at the land charges register and the planning register, that are the two biggest registers we look at? Do they need to be refined? And the answer to that is yes. A personal searcher who has experience will look at that and think, is that really relevant? If it's on the land charges register, yes, you've got to reveal it, but you reveal it in that part of the search. But do we need to know that in 1983 somebody wanted an application for a garden shed or a garage? No, we don't, because the garage is there, it exists, and it's existed since, say, 1985. So you don't need to know that. So therefore, we need some legislation, or whatever it is they need now, to say, let's not reveal back to 1977. Let's go back to, say, 1990, in fact, the year 2000, because we're 25 years old in the year 2000. The information we're giving is just getting far too much, and a lot of it is just not relevant anymore.
So it's about being up to date as to what's really relevant now, and not just keep churning out the same old, I guess.
Yeah, it is, because, I mean, it did come in that some councils kept planning records for 10 years.
Right.
And that was it. So we went back to 2015. You didn't go prior to that. Now, perhaps with a listed building or something like that, you do need the relevant information, because you want to know if that double glazing did have permission in the listed building. Was it given permission prior to it being listed? But when you've got, like your garage extension, your shed extension, your two-story extension at the back that is there, and the land charges will say whether that, because it would have been granted conditionally, so the land charges will give you that. But do you need to know? Because there's just, we're going absolutely ridiculous on the amount of information that conveyancers now have to look at. And they're not just dealing with your property, remember, they're probably dealing with another 30 or 40 different conveyancing files. Right. So if they've got to look at all those searches and that information and check it's just getting a minefield.
It does sound quite difficult to work out. And Hamish, I would have thought in your practice, if you wouldn't mind swiftly unmuting, sir, sorry. I would have thought in your practice you've come across an ever need to focus in on the right data.
Well, yeah, I think this is one of the things. We are very, very pleased to a certain extent, because the land charges information that is now available through the land charges information that's now available through the land charges rather than going direct to the council for it. Right. There is a challenge with transition in some cases if you're not too careful. And there was a film, wasn't there? I never saw the film, but I always remember it, Lost in Translation, because in fact we get lost in translation communicating our brain with somebody else's. They don't understand what we're saying half the time. Not necessarily because it's garbage, but because we think in different ways. And it's much the same sort of thing. Now, material information is meant to be material information. And the land charges, as Jackie said, you need to make sure that there's there's nothing outstanding there. You don't want to charge against the property, or money to be paid, or anything of that nature. So it is important. However, unfortunately, land registry are an intermediary in all of this. They just receive stuff. I mean, basically, it goes in. They use AI. Now, AI is not human. They use AI, and it might be a good use of AI. I'm not so sure. They might be able to perfect it, but it will take over all sorts of information, actually, from the council records, including stuff, as Jackie said, it goes back to 1947. Do you really? So that needs to be looked at and refined. Now, what do you do as a researcher? What do you do as an agent? What do you do as a search provider? Well, there's several different things. Now, unfortunately, if you're a desktop provider, you don't really necessarily know it. Plus the fact there's a very, very good chance you're actually really involved in a very complicated type of corporate provision, in that you've got just mountains and mountains of paperwork just coming through sort of all the time. And of course, although it comes through like that, it goes like that, because obviously you want to work on the first things first. So it's a bit deeper particularly. So what do? Do you spend the time refining that information to bring it back? But that doesn't bring your, if you refine it, it brings down the information in the search, but it doesn't bring down your workload. Your workload stacks as you're doing the refine. So basically, you don't have time to do it. So basically, you whiz that back to the solicitor. Solicitor gets the information. Now, they have to pass that too, because it's owned technically by the buyer or the seller. Normally the buyers, as we sort of speak. But this is changing as well, because it becomes different. Are we working on behalf of the buyer solicitor in their new form and their new material information, or are we acting for the seller solicitor? So it doesn't matter, because they both require the same information to a large extent. So it should be possible to refine the information so it's going to work either way. And that takes, but it doesn't matter for somebody who is working on it from a local perspective. They understand, they know, and also, if you like, they've done it quite a lot of times before. So they don't cut and paste. What they actually sort of do is interpret what is required and actually proceed to put that within the sort of search format. So if you like, as a consequence of that, because there's a level of understanding there, the information is transferred to the solicitor looks through it, there will be fewer queries as a consequence. When the solicitor looks, they're looking for less information, and if you like, there will be fewer queries that they need to actually look into. If the procedure has been carried out by somebody who's experienced, somebody who's local. So basically, we've got a double whammy there, which is remarkably good. Also, the information is more likely to be understood. I mean, Jackie's quite right. Unfortunately, the general public, and by that I include me, when I look at a search there, it is just an overwhelming amount of information.
Right.
Just look at it. What you need to do is to actually produce information that both the solicitor, good for the solicitor, it makes it easier for the solicitor, because the solicitor is communicating, if they get the time, working with the right solicitor, working with the right professional. And if you like, there's a nice flow of information. And where's the work being done? The work is being carried out by the agent. That's an important thing.
And one of the things we do bang our drum often about, and I think Jackie, you can concur with this, finding the right information is often down to understanding local knowledge, and we find it time and time again, do we not?
Yeah, it is. Local knowledge is you know, it's everything really when it comes down to a search. It's. I mean, I'm going to hark back to my days in the police force before I became a searcher, and local knowledge was important then. You know, like it's the same thing. You know, there was a burglary, and you look at it and you think, no, who's done that? Because you're local, you know who's done it. So you go around to say them, you arrest them. Yeah, I did it. Hands up, it was me. your local knowledge that's why it's best to concentrate on just a few councils rather than, loads of councils. That's why I didn't do searches in Shropshire. I didn't do them in Oxford because I just can't go there and do it. I rely on Hamish's firm or Heather's firm to use that local knowledge. They know about that new development. They know if there's a Section 106 agreement on it. They know if there's a water agreement on it. And as the longer you're in the business, the more you know. You know that silly little things that you just can't get if you're not local. It's so important to have local knowledge. It's like your community bobby you used to have years ago. They know exactly who did the scrumping. They know exactly. And it's the same with the IPSA members. We are local. We don't want to do national because we can rely on someone else who's in that area to have this exactly the same local knowledge that we have in our area. So local knowledge is very, very important. It's whether there was a tanning factory up the road, if it was an abattoir, those silly little things that people that aren't in the area don't know.
That make all the difference, frankly. I just, before I conclude this, I just want to say that it's always been the way within IPSA that IPSA, is that the relevant person for that locality does the search. It's basically a non-competing pact between a whole bunch of people with a similar agenda, which is to help people get the right information to be able to make the right decisions. Hamish, would you care to take us home?
Well put, both particularly by Jackie. When we go back to that local association, I forgot about what she did in her earlier days. There's another. Yes, we won't go any further about what I used to get up to. I knew locally where to actually go to avoid the police. This was one of the great things about that, was people coming into the district didn't. But it is very much so. It's something. It's the simplicity in a way of actually sort of doing it. And I'm just putting in perspective as well. We had, for goodness knows how long, information on our Cherwell District Council. They were awaiting the build of a new station in Kidlington to sort of link up with Bicester Village that excites a lot of people. And for a period of about 7 years, we had this thing about a station being built. Now, that appeared everywhere within Cherwell District.
Right.
And in Oxford District and in South Oxfordshire. So it always had that on there. So we could add this little note when it said about this train station. This is based. We could actually just put down, we could add to the information. Not do we refine it, but we can actually add to that information to make it more personal, the particular sort of property. If you say, hey, look, that's 7.5 miles away, or that's 12 miles away, it makes a difference to the particular sort of person. Because if you say, and Jackie put the perspective in there, if somebody says, oh, there's a railway station being built, oh, how far away is it? Are they building a railway? Is it going to... Well, you just pop that little bit of detail in. You saved everybody's time and you've reassured the buyer. And that is the most important thing. You've reassured the buyer.
Well, do you know what? Buying and selling property is an insecure proposition at best. Reassuring the buyer is frankly a fundamental action that needs to be taken to make sure the deal goes through without everybody getting stressed out. And frankly, at this time of year, that's exactly what we need. I just want to thank Hamish McClade for having set this thing up in the first place. And of course, Jackie Dyson, friend of the show, Yorkshire Search Agency, technically retired, but still very much with a hand in the mix. And thank you so much for your great insight. And to you out there, thank you for watching with us. I just suddenly saw a whole bunch of people turn up. Thank you for watching. If you haven't seen it before, each week we talk about the reasons why IPSA, the Independent Property Search Association, oh my goodness, are what they are, what they stand for, and most importantly, why you perhaps should think about using them rather than going to a factory conveyancer or just throwing it at your solicitor and hoping they make a good hash of it. These people will find the right information, as I've often said, sort of John Lewis type approach, for trying to curate out of the many options out there the right and best information for you. So therefore you can actually make a decision with the assurity of knowing you've got the right information, cats notwithstanding. And thank you so much for your watching. Get your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please, in these troubled times, look after your mental health. Bye bye now.
Bye.